My Dress Up Darling is the best anime of winter 2021 and is already a contender for Anime of the Year. Not only that, but Marin Kitagawa is a contender for Waifu of the Year. I know it sounds early to make such bold declarations, but I think I can back it up. At the time of this writing, the anime has concluded, and all 12 episodes have provided so much enjoyment, humor, but also tears, happy tears, and topped off with a surprising amount of intrigue. There's lots of Romcom anime and manga that have come out in recent years that, on the surface level, you can easily compare to this one. Please Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro, My Senpai Is Annoying, Kaguya-sama Love Is War, Teasing Master Takagi-san, Uzaki-chan Just Wants to Hang Out, and Anjo-san no Gal, among others. However, if you dig deeper, it's not difficult to find out how My Dress Up Darling vastly surpasses most of them on multiple fronts, and they don't seem to be talked about much in the online anime community, and that is seriously bothering me. First, the similarities. My Dress Up Darling is about a young man named Wakana Gojou who is extremely introverted and insecure about his passion. That passion happens to be creating hina dolls. His insecurities stem from an incident during his childhood, when a girl harshly criticized his love of clothing and dolls, calling it weird, and calling him weird. This caused him to shut himself off from the rest of the world in many ways. He never sought out to make any friends or find a girlfriend, because he was under the impression that nobody would accept his hobby. As time went on, his insecurities and arguably borderline self-loathing continued to grow. This is until he met Marin Kitagawa. Marin Kitagawa is a gyaru, which I'll get to later, and one of the popular girls, seemingly at their school. Her and Gojou have obviously never spoken before. Her introduction was perfect. It involved her chatting with her friends, and they bring up a guy that she recently rejected. She rejected him because he insulted her passion in anime, a factor he picked up on due to a keychain attached to her waist, and she put him down by saying that at least she's not a stalker. In the sub, she said that the only lame thing here is you, responding to him for calling her lame for being a nerd. As great as the dub is, I kinda prefer the sub version of the line, but either way it gets the point across. Marin Kitagawa is a great person who doesn't tolerate when a person's passions are chastised. Of course, that's her hobby, but it's shown later that she'll do the same for others as well. Marin and Gojou first come into contact in a humorous scene where she flies across the classroom and conks her head on the corner of his desk. We still don't know what or who launched her or why. But that interaction is very brief as she apologizes, makes sure he's okay, and leaves. Still, the interaction does illustrate the immediate concern that she shows for other people, especially when the possible injuries or inconvenience that the person could have potentially received were maybe her fault. The next time they see each other is after school that day when Gojou is cleaning the classroom. He claims that he agreed to do it for his friends, but Marin sees right through him. She proclaims that that's not friendship, and that they're just using him. And Gojou isn't an idiot. He wasn't ignorant that he was lying to her, and in some small way to himself. He just doesn't have it in him to voice what he really wants. Then she says the best line in the entire series. You shouldn't agree to do things you don't want to do. You need to think about yourself more. You need to speak up about how you're feeling for your own sake. This line cut deeper than you could possibly imagine. I already determined that I relate to Gojou way more than I care to admit, even though I literally just did. And so when she said that, I felt like she was talking directly to me. But in a good way. Not Nagatoro bullshit where she says obvious stuff in a needlessly cruel manner, but being more thoughtful and considerate. She likely knows that he already understands this, but sometimes it does help for somebody else to vocalize it in order to progress down that path. When she said it, it made me reminisce on myself. Mainly on my past, but even on who I am now to a much lesser extent. I also have a tendency to be a pushover and do things for people simply because they ask. It stems from a lack of confidence and a desire not to disappoint other people, even though I'm fully aware that they're likely just taking advantage of me. While I have gotten better, it's something that I still struggle with, even though I'm 27. While her initial introduction was fine, this moment made me fall in love with her character, to instantaneously declare her the best girl of the season, and she's only going to get better. Take notes, Nagatoro. This is how you give a guy encouragement. And Marin isn't even in love with Gojou yet. Obviously, those feelings will develop in the future, but they have yet to at this moment. And she doesn't sugarcoat things either. I don't like this moment more than Nagatoro's words at the beginning of that series because she holds back. Because she really doesn't. She tells him the truth, everything that's on her mind, but she does it with genuine thoughtfulness and care to give him the truth, rather than going too far. And then she proceeds to help him clean up the classroom. How can people not see how far superior this is to Nagatoro, who knew he was being bullied, did nothing to help him in the moment, and then was also needlessly cruel to him? Okay, that's it for my rant of Nagatoro for the time being, but I'm sure that I'll come back to that at a later time in this video, and I also want to make an entire video on that series in general as well. The next time they see each other is after class the next day. Gojou is in a dimmed classroom using his sewing machine to make clothing for his hina dolls when Marin walks in suddenly. Gojou is incredibly shocked and trips, his hina doll plummeting out of his hands. It's in this moment that he becomes terrified, thinking that his life in high school is basically over. And to be fair, they kind of make us believe that as well. Despite the amazing scene with Marin that I just spent 2 paragraphs praising, they really build this up where she grins maniacally, starts sweating, and almost looks like she's gonna have a fucking orgasm with bitchy bullying pleasure. But then she surprises everybody, especially Gojou, when she gets excited. She praises the work on the hina doll and says that she thinks that it's really cool. In the same scene, she reveals to him that she's a massive otaku who loves to cosplay anime characters at conventions. She asks him if he'll be willing to use his skills to create cosplay costumes for her. After some understandable trepidation on whether he can trust her or not, as he's never experienced anything like this before, the traumatizing moment from his childhood flashing through his mind, he decides to agree. And this is the inciting incident, when a friendship between these two unlikely individuals begins, a friendship that will obviously progress to something much more in the future. In this scene, we learn other interesting stuff about Marin as well. That being that she's also a huge pervert who loves erotic games. The one she mentions in this episode is called Slippery Girls, and she wants to cosplay the character Shizuku-tan from it. It doesn't exist, unfortunately, I looked it up. But there's also her elaborate explanation about the joy of cosplay, that wearing costumes of your favorite characters allows you to express just how much you love them. What she calls the ultimate form of love. On top of that, I would add that it's also an amazing way to express who you are as a person, especially for people who can't interact with others very well or express themselves in other ways, such as introverts. That obviously doesn't apply to her, as she's clearly very extroverted. It's just something that I think should be added to the explanation, as that's essentially what the entire series is about. While Gojou has yet to cosplay himself, although the idea has been brought up precisely one time, he's still expressing his own creativity and personality by creating these cosplays for her. Cosplay is one of those art forms where there's actually 2 types of expression: those who make the costumes and those who wear them. Some people do both of these themselves, but in this case it's being split up between 2 people. Earlier in this video, I compared the series with others like Takagi-san and Nagatoro, but like I also stated, the comparisons are extremely superficial. Marin is a peculiar case. It's not entirely clear to me if she's intentionally teasing Gojou, or if she's just really confident in herself, and he just happens to get embarrassed because of how otherworldly sexy that she is, especially in comparison to how normal he is. I suppose it could also be a combination of both. Unlike most characters of her ilk, she rarely gets smug. It's only within the first episode or 2, and even then, I've questioned if they were even intended to be smug expressions. And even if they are, they stop almost immediately after that point. Overall, she's just happy that she found somebody whom she can share her passion with. Somebody who can make cosplays for her. And she enjoys hanging around him. And she is shockingly honest with her feelings. Like I said before, the best scene in the series so far is definitely that moment in episode 1 when she blatantly tells Gojou what he needs to do in order to be happy. She was perfectly honest without being harsh or brutal, and relayed everything that was on her mind regarding the situation. Nagatoro, take notes! It's that level of honesty but also kindness that separates her from other female anime characters like her, despite her age, combined with her extreme love that she demonstrates for anime and cosplay, which is truly infectious, that made me fall in love with her the moment that she started interacting with Gojou. This is one of the few romance anime where I wanted to see the main couple get together by episode 1. In fact, the only other two that I can think of that accomplished that for me were probably Toradora and Lovely Complex, two other romantic masterpieces in anime. It's difficult to call this series a true masterpiece just yet, but it's definitely on the road to that destination. I love how bright, cheery, and upbeat that Marin is, and how it juxtaposes the gloomy, anxious, and borderline depressed air that Gojou gives off, and how they complement each other. When discussing romcom anime and manga, there's almost always the point that they often aren't very realistic. But contrary to popular belief, I think My Dress Up Darling is actually one of the most realistic that has come out in recent years. There's an old saying called opposites attract, which posits the theory that people on a subconscious level tend to seek out people as romantic interests who are different from them, whether it's different interests, different beliefs, or different personality types, such as introverts with extroverts. This is because we subconsciously feel that these people complete us in a way, that they have what we lack. It's not difficult to deduce the crucial differences between Gojou and Marin, and these differences inform much of the comedy, the awkwardness, and the growth for both of them. Gojou is extremely introverted, who spends most of his time alone. While he would like to have friends, I imagine he still wouldn't ever be the kind of person who would want to be around large groups of people all the time. In episode 5, when they went to their first anime convention together, he seems at least a tad uncomfortable around so many other people. Not to mention, he's not even an otaku. Also, while he likely does have perverted thoughts, in fact, that's confirmed in episode 3 when he fantasizes about Marin and orgasms in his sleep, he never ever lets them leave the confines of his mind when he's with Marin. Marin, on the other hand, seems to be extremely extroverted, who derives energy from being around other like-minded individuals. She's a huge otaku who loves more than anything to dress up in amazing cosplays and go to conventions with them. That's the reason why she wanted to be friends with Gojou in the first place. She even knows a lot of other famous cosplayers that go to the same conventions by name, and her cosplays are so famous in the local area that a lot of people online are aware of her, although I don't think that they know what her real name is. She is also extremely perverted, and unlike Gojou, is not at all shy about it. This is shown explicitly in episode 1 when she gushes about how many of the perverted cosplays that she fantasizes about. On top of that, she has friends, which I'll get to later, and she pegs me as the type of person who would rejoice every time that she'd get the opportunity to make another friend. However, the similarities can't and shouldn't be ignored. Namely, both of them are huge nerds just for different things. Marin for anime and otaku culture, and Gojou for hina dolls and making clothes. And they're extremely passionate. These passions, different but similar, are the biggest thing that initially draw them to each other, and is likely going to be one of the crucial elements that help evolve their relationship going forward. Gojou's introduction was heart-wrenching for me specifically. Lots of introverts, myself included, have major inferiority complexes. Not saying that extroverts can't have them, but I do think they're more common with introverts. And that's definitely the case with him. And the thing is, most of the time it's just in our head. There's no real need for it. And even if we are aware that we can accomplish great things if we put effort in, it doesn't prevent us from thinking negatively about ourselves and ignoring our positive qualities. What if we fail? And sometimes, even more than that, what will others think if they find out about the things that we love? It's a real struggle. With Gojou, it's even worse because of the traumatic incident when he was a child. He likely would have already been insecure and timid, possessing a hobby that isn't exactly common. But what that girl said to him caused him to close his heart off even more. In reality, most characters we've seen in the series probably don't care, at the very worst. And like Marin, there probably would be others that thinks it's cool at best, but because of his traumatic past, he just can't fathom that. And the sad part is, we often don't have anybody that we can go to for real advice. Gojou does have his grandfather that he lives with, but it's often difficult for teenagers to go to adult loved ones for advice with stuff like this. And even if he did, it's hard for adults to give real meaningful advice to kids, especially adults from such a far removed generation as that. These are often issues that we have to resolve on our own or find friends of the same generation as us to help us resolve them. And Gojou is doing just that, albeit not necessarily of his own free will. That's why Marin compliments him so well. She has a ton of confidence and is shown hating people who make fun of others based on their hobbies, interests, or unique quirks. This is seen in episode 1 when some random douchey guy does just that, and she tells him off spectacularly. Before I continue, I want to talk very briefly about Gyaru in anime and manga. Can somebody please tell me why Gyaru has been turned into a personality in anime and manga? Because that's not what it is at all. In real life, Gyaru is a fashion statement, nothing more. Specifically, it's a Japanese style of fashion that's inspired by American fashion from the mid to late 1900s. That were brought over to Japan by the American jeans brand Lee, who introduced a new brand of jeans to their brand Wrangler back in the 1970s. But for some reason, there are many anime and manga, especially in recent years, that have turned this fashion statement into an actual personality, and as such, so many of these characters have been written as extremely shallow, a lot of times extremely unlikable. Even Nagatoro, who has grown on me to an extent, has a lot of these same issues. Marin is different because while she is a fan of the Gyaru fashion, it doesn't inform her personality. She's deeper than that, and thus I want to follow her, and I want to see her end up with Gojou. I was also impressed by the introduction of Marin's friends, too. In the first 6 episodes, we don't see them that much, but they seem rather likable. In anime and manga, the friends of Gyaru's are often even more unlikable than the main Gyaru. I've heard that later on it's revealed that they kind of assumed that Marin and Gojou were dating, which is kind of funny in and of itself, but they don't butt in and try to help him with his issues, even though nobody asked them to. They're just kind of there, they're okay with him, and that's it. And I'll be fine with it if they do get more screen time later on, so long as the likability remains, or perhaps if they get even more likable. It'll be funnier than hell once Gojou and Marin are together. She reveals it to them, if they revealed themselves that they assumed they were already dating this entire time. Okay, now I want to talk about the fan service in this series. This video was taking me a lot longer than I was hoping to write, and later on I had to rewrite this section because I discovered that the disturbing amount of people that have been writing off this series' deep themes and characters simply because there's a lot of fan service in it. This is the most idiotic thing I think I've ever seen. It's like people see tits presented prominently and they decide that the series can't be deep. You do realize that boobs are a real thing, right? You do realize that there are women who are confident in their bodies and have no problem showing them off to the guy that they like, right? Here's my stance on fan service in anime. As long as it doesn't overshadow the deeper aspects of an anime, and the girl or guy that the fan service is directed towards are comfortable with it, then I'm perfectly fine with it. There's nothing that will drag me out of an anime more than the object of the ecchi scenes being uncomfortable with what's going on. Not only is she not uncomfortable with it, but there's also some arguments that she might be doing it intentionally to get Gojou's attention, especially once the series reaches its halfway point. And it in no way overshadows the depth of character and theme. And I'm sorry, but you're extremely shallow and short-sighted if you think it does. The ecchi not only doesn't distract from the depth of character and theme, but it actually enhances it. I didn't know if you knew this, but these characters are teenagers. Teenagers get horny. I mean, I'm almost 30 and I'm extremely horny, but teenagers are just discovering their hormones. So the over-the-top level of ecchi presents itself is likely in service of that idea. Gojou has the hots for Marin and is stunned by how attractive she is. Whenever he sees the slightest bit of her cleavage, her thighs, or her feet, hey, I'm not gonna judge, that's all he can focus on, just like the standard teenage boy. And thus, that's all they're going to allow us to focus on, since we're supposed to be experiencing this story through his eyes. I'm going to talk more about her specific brand of flirting in the second video, which doesn't accelerate until the second half of the series, and is at least partially related to the ecchi moments in the series. But it has to be said that you can't be stupid for simply not liking the ecchi moments in a series. Opinions don't have a burden of proof, and I'd argue the same if the ecchi does somehow pull you out of the story. But somehow managing to deny the deep aspects even exist at all in the series, that's a level of stupidity that I didn't expect to have to deal with while watching this series. Also, am I the last person in the world to find out that this manga was written by a woman? Shinichi Fukuda, to be exact. I'm not complaining, just to be clear, but I am surprised. I don't know if I've ever seen an ecchi manga written by a woman with the brand of ecchi that this series provides, focusing on elements that stereotypically men would be more interested in, such as big boobs, the vagina, stuff like that. I'm pretty sure every fanservice manga I've read has been more similar to Free Iwatobi Swim Club, which focuses appealing to the Fujoshi crowd, with hot guys sporting six-pack abs and constantly taking their shirts off. This is a pretty fascinating discovery, and if you know any that are like that were written by a female author, please let me know. On the topic of Shinichi Fukuda, I recently read an article that stated that she cried upon seeing the anime adaptation, which is absolutely beautiful. Apparently, she watched the first 2 episodes for like 13 hours in a row. It also mentioned some other interesting things. Honestly, I've already made a video on this topic in particular a while before you'll see this video. It's taken me way too long to make this video. Anyways, back to the actual analysis. After the classroom scene, Gojou goes home contemplating the moment that he had with Marin. He's still in extreme disbelief. The next day, Marin randomly shows up at his house, claiming that she got his address from the school and invites herself in. This leads to what's probably the most famous scene in the series so far, where she reveals that she's wearing a bikini underneath her normal clothes, and he proceeds to measure her body so that he'll have her sizes to create her costume for the Shizuka-tan cosplay. When I said before that there is a bit of interaction that may or may not be considered intentional teasing depending on how you interpret it, this is the scene that I was talking about. The moment she removes her outerwear, he freaks out. He wasn't expecting this, and is even more off-put by how incredibly confident that she is. She doesn't hesitate to show off her body. And even if there is slight intentional teasing here, I'm pretty sure these actions are entirely based on confidence, as I don't think she'd have started to develop feelings for him until halfway through the series. There's a lot of imagery in this scene that's become iconic in the online anime community, such as whipping off her sweater, revealing her very, very, very nice assets, with a grin on her lips, laying on her side, holding up a peace sign which reveals almost everything except for her back and butt, sitting on her bed with her legs spread wide, leaving even less to the imagination, and of course Gojou measuring the length of her entire body with a tape measure, being extremely flustered as he does so. This segment takes up the majority of the episode. Gojou's constant hesitation and trepidation is the main focus, and it gets so bad that Marin actually ends up getting legitimately frustrated with him, as she just wants to get this part of the process done and over with already. If someone were to make it argument that her teasing wasn't intentional, this is likely the factor that they'd use as evidence. If she wanted to tease him with her body, then she'd probably be more than happy to extend this moment, relishing in every second of his embarrassment. In reality, it seems to irritate her, and she just wants to move on. Regardless, though, astounding confidence sizzles from her this entire scene. And the only time she gets embarrassed is when he's measuring her legs and he accidentally hits her sweet spot. But even after that, she recovers from it fairly quickly. This is also the main scene detractors bring up when they try to claim this series is just about fan service, but I already talked about that in depth above, so I don't want to dwell on it any longer. It's stupid, let's move on. After Gojou asks Marin if she has any references for slippery girls, as he'd like to know the details of the outfit so he can draw up the patterns, this moment is important because it shows us just how dedicated that Gojou is in his craft. While he was hesitant at first, he's in now, and he wants to do the best job that he possibly can, even when it's regarding a subject material that is, let's be honest, very uncomfortable for him. Then Marin gives him both of the Slippery Girls games that she just happened to bring along with her, which is amazing. Later that night, Gojou can be found alone in his nearly dark room watching Slippery Girls. His grandfather walks in on him and sees him seems rather horrified at the sounds emanating from the TV. But as the scene continues, his grandfather's expression turns to that of intrigue, as despite the lewd subject matter, Gojou is studying the TV deadly serious as he writes details in a notepad. When he goes to sleep that night, he has something that I've never expected an anime rom-com to actually address: a wet dream. He has a dream of Marin in a cosplay, an extremely lewd cosplay, a wonderfully lewd cosplay. And then he wakes up, checks under his blanket, realizes that he has a boner. We don't see it, obviously, but this is still a show that's aimed primarily towards teenagers, but is strongly implied. And then he glances to a box of tissues, sighs reluctantly, and we cut away. So yeah, Marin so rudely invaded his dreams, gave him a healthy case of morning wood, and he started the day by jacking off thinking about her. This is actually kind of amazing. This is something that obviously happens. While it doesn't go away when you become an adult necessarily, it's even worse as a teenager when you've just started experiencing hormones of adulthood and you don't fully understand them yet. Wet dreams are a thing, even regarding real people that you know personally. But name me another anime and manga rom-com aimed primarily towards teenagers that addresses this incredibly uncomfortable topic. Because I can't think of one. That's one of my favorite things about this story. Intermingling with all the over-the-top zany comedy, it's a level of shocking realism that helps make it more relatable and thus even more engaging. And it's mostly dropped after this as well. He doesn't reference it again for a very long time, and even then, he doesn't tell her what happened, because obviously. Because of the wet dream, it's difficult for him to even so much as look her in the eyes at school that day, let alone hang out with her. He spends several minutes simply trying to avoid her, feeling shame for how he was viewing her. In reality, there's no real reason for him to feel shame or to avoid her, but these are the emotions that he's experiencing, and even though they're illogical, they're still completely understandable and realistic. And to Marin's credit, once she finally finds him, she's able to diffuse the situation without even knowing the reason for his actions. The true reason, that is. He doesn't think that they should be friends considering how drastically different they are. He apologizes, but Marin surprises him, telling him that if he's going to apologize, not to run away in the first place. She asks him why he's been avoiding her, and Gojou replies by saying that people are going to think that they know each other, and that it's probably best if they don't hang out when other people are around. Marin surprises him again by telling him that they are already friends. Gojou, while stunned, attempts to double down on this mentality, claiming that he heard others speculating that they're going out. Then she humorously suggests that maybe they should start going out, which was obviously a joke and was confirmed as such herself, but it still caused him to fluster massively. And that didn't cease Marin grabbing his arm, pulling him to his feet, and dragging him along, telling him that he she wanted to take him shopping for materials to make the Shizuka-tan cosplay. I've mentioned before that I love Marin's ability to see through other people's facades. Episode 1 presents this perfectly when that douche who criticized her for being an otaku, and when she saw Gojou cleaning the classroom by himself, but also her willingness to tell people exactly what they need to hear without getting too brutal or harsh unless they deserve that level of cruelty. But this shows her ability to resolve complex situations with her friends, even if she isn't fully aware of the issues that her friends are dealing with. For example, by this point she still isn't aware why Gojou is avoiding her, that it was due to deep-seated trauma and anxieties instilled in him by his childhood friend. But she was still able to cut through it and cheer up his mood, and get back on track with going shopping with him. And remember, by this point, she still hasn't developed feelings for him, so theoretically, this is exactly how she would have responded if her other friends acted this way, the way he is. Marin is so great, guys, I cannot stress this enough. Then we get to the shopping trip, which is mostly humorous and not much plot or character development or characterization. A lot of anime and manga romantic comedies are formatted like this, where there are scenes that are for character and no plot, and then scenes that are meant for humor without anything crucial to progression. As much as I love the genre, an issue that I usually have is when a series puts humor in scenes that shouldn't have it, scenes that should be more serious. Of course, there are examples where that is necessary. Like the previous scene outside, for example. The only thing that she could really do to diffuse the situation was with humor, because she's not fully aware of the reasons behind his actions. For the most part, this series is excellent at separating serious scenes from humorous scenes, unless there's logical reasoning as to why they should be put together. In a lot of cases, such as with Nagatoro, it just makes the character come off as inconsiderate and without empathy for the person that they're supposed to have a crush on. In this scene, we see a lot more teasing from Marin, but it's the perfect level of teasing that I'm able to find funny without making me uncomfortable. My favorite is when she's in the changing room. Gojou already understandably feels uncomfortable in a store that sells women's clothing like lingerie, bras, panties, and such. She pops her head out of the dressing room to show him the lingerie that she was wearing to get his opinion. He, of course, gets very flustered, and she teases him by asking him if she should wear something sexier, which embarrasses him even more. It was a little funny in itself, but then she doesn't dwell on the teasing. It was one-off, humorous, and the topic almost immediately changed after that. Later that night, they're eating at a ramen shop. When they're leaving and chatting, a woman comments in her mind that she envies high school couples like them. Obviously, we know that they're not actually a couple yet, and that Marin hasn't developed feelings for him yet, but there's no way for onlookers to know that. Marin asks him how far he is in Slippery Girls, and Gojou says, so matter-of-fact, that he's at the point where the guy in is in front of the entire school and can't stop ejaculating. He says this out loud, and it gets the attention of the same woman and a few other onlookers, as they continue to talk about the scene and are visibly terrified. The funniest part is that despite how uncomfortable Gojou usually is when it comes to this stuff, he's happily discussing the game with her out loud when there's others around, and it never crosses his mind that people could be listening. It's actually kind of perfect. I should also mention that during this conversation, Marin tells him about a famous cosplayer on the internet called Juju, which is a subtle foreshadowing as she'll become a decently prominent character during the second half of the series. This scene lasts longer than you might expect, as they also hit a food stand where Marin grabs a snack, but it also serves a purpose. These two haven't spent that much time together at all yet, but they're still growing incredibly close. This relationship is highlighted when Marin tells Gojou that he doesn't have to pay her back for the ramen, even though he offers. She then admits to him that she was just really happy, because it's not often that somebody plays a game that she recommends. Most people would just end the conversation with, yeah, that seems fun. She admits that she didn't think he'd even play Slippery Girls, and when he did, he drew her outfit down to every last detail. All of these things made her very happy, and then she thanked him. There's an old saying that every great romantic relationship starts out as a great friendship. Every great romance anime and manga has their own way to represent this. In the case of My Dress Up Darling, it's to explore these two as people and grow their relationship as close friends long before they start to develop deep romantic feelings for each other. That's a unique approach that I've really been enjoying in this series. Remember, by this point Marin hasn't developed feelings for him at all yet, and Gojou probably has feelings for her already, but they're way beneath the surface, not in the forefront of his mind or the plot just yet. And this series never stops developing them as friends before romantic interests. A few days later, Gojou's grandfather has a nasty fall, after a humorous scene of him seeing slippery girls, which falls out of his backpack, which ends him up in the hospital. Because of this, Gojou misses a day of school, and when he returns, Marin is perfectly understanding and empathetic towards him. That's definitely nice, but because of Gojou's insecurities, it doesn't help a tremendous amount, especially since he has a mere 2 weeks to fully create her outfit, and he has barely even started on it yet. By and large, Gojou's insecurities don't make any sense logically. But then again, insecurities rarely do in reality. Everything that he worries about, that he's not worthy of being Marin's friend, and later on that he's not worthy of being her boyfriend, and that he can't create a great costume for her in such a short amount of time, it's all bullshit. The latter point proves to be bullshit before too long, as you'll probably imagine. But let's sit back and think about what he's been through. That incident as a child might not seem like much to an outsider looking in, but to a young kid, it's horrible. It's something that he still has flashbacks about to this day. However, this time when he does, he also has flashbacks about his grandfather. When Gojou was young, he asked his grandfather if his fingers ever got tired constantly making hina dolls every day. His grandfather laughed and said that they do, that creating hina dolls is very difficult, but also that just because you love something and are passionate about it doesn't make it easy. He said the fact that you're passionate about it is why you're able to continue even when you get tired or it becomes challenging. During the same time, he envisions Marin being inspired by her passion and gratitude for his help. All of this finally gets to him, and he gets up to start working on the outfit in the middle of the night, and works through the nights, so he barely gets any sleep. The next day, he shows it off to Marin, who is absolutely amazed and thrilled to have it complete. Gojou is happy that he could help her and tells her that she'll be able to go to her cosplay event now, but Marin tells him that she actually had no intention of going to today's event. She didn't know how long it takes to make clothing, so she was planning on holding off until she was sure it was done. Gojou, with all of the stress accumulated, plus lack of sleep, collapses. Marin apologizes for not being clearer to him about the details, but Gojou says that he is just glad that there's more time, as he rushed through it when he thought that he was on time crunch. And then Marin started crying. She apologized for not noticing how much stress he was being put under, with his grandfather's condition and making the outfit just piling shit on top of him endlessly. And Gojou apologized for not being clearer to her about exactly what he was doing, and not asking for clarification about the event. This is one of my favorite scenes in the entire show, as it further emphasizes the likability but also flawed nature of these two characters, and how close they become in such a short amount of time. And then it's time for Marin to put on the costume, which she wasn't going to do right away, but Gojou was eager about it. He helped her prepare her hair and her makeup. There's a really funny scene when Gojou shows her that he already has fake eyelashes that she can wear, and Marin asks him if these are his girlfriends, to which Gojou tells her that he doesn't have a girlfriend. It's funny in the moment, but also if you consider these two are obviously going to become a couple in the future. And let's not forget the moment when Gojou starts gushing about hina dolls and says that he wants to make the most beautiful hina dolls ever one day. And Marin tells him that he definitely will. On top of that, we see that Marin was willing to shave her eyebrows off in order to put the fake eyelashes on, commenting that at least hair grows back. It's the little details like this that makes these characters, this relationship, and this series as a whole so damn amazing. Then it was time for Marin to finally put her outfit on, and she looked absolutely amazing in it. She seriously looked like a completely different person, which is the power of cosplay, and more specifically, the power of having a great cosplay designer on your side, especially one who's willing to sacrifice his own sleep and put his blood, sweat, and tears into creating the outfit. After that, it's finally time for the anime convention. I love the build-up. This series spent 5 episodes, not only preparing her very first cosplay, but also building these two not only as individual characters, but as close friends, which helps us care about the cosplay itself even more. I already mentioned that she looks absolutely stunning, but during the convention, which takes place outdoors, I didn't even know there were outside anime conventions, we see tons of other cosplays, and each of them look just as professional and amazing. Gojou, of course, accompanies her, and he does appear to be a bit uncomfortable. This makes sense because he's a complete normie who isn't invested in otaku culture, unlike Marin. And thankfully, the uncomfortableness is funny. It doesn't go so far that it makes the viewer feel uncomfortable as a result. This is just a new experience to him, and I'm sure he'll get used to it if he attends any more conventions with Marin. Oddly enough, this is actually an instance where I actually do relate to him. I relate to him in a lot of ways already, but this is an area where you wouldn't think I would considering our differences, but I do. Even though I'm a hardcore otaku myself, I always find it difficult to talk with other otaku about our shared interests. Yes, I am that introverted. That's even the case if I know for a fact that the other otaku is also extremely introverted. Therefore, while I do enjoy going to anime conventions, I do often feel out of place at them because it's not like I have any friends that can go with me, and I'm always nervous around other people, even if we share the same interests and hobbies. On that note, I'm sure Marin is extremely happy, not just because Gojou made this costume for her, for which we've already seen the extent of her happiness, but also because it doesn't seem like her friends are otaku like her, so this is very well might be the first time that somebody has accompanied her to an anime convention, although that's unconfirmed, it's just my theory. During the convention, we of course get a lot of the trademark humor and lewdness of the series, those two things often being the same thing. Probably the funniest for me is when Marin is getting too hot in the cosplay and she has to take a break and take some of it off. She's dripping wet with sweat. Her boobs are, of course, being prominently presented to Gojou. And yeah, it's all amazing stuff. But the only thing worth pointing out here is at the end of the episode, when they're riding the train home. Marin asks Gojou for help. Thanks Gojou for helping her complete the Shizukatan cosplay, and Gojou thanks her for the experience. Marin asks when he'll be ready to start working on the next cosplay. Gojou is confused, as he apparently thought this was only going to be Shizukatan, but Marin says that she has at least 50 favorite characters she wants to become. Marin decides to tease Gojou by telling him with a smug grin that he looks happy right now. After some trepidation, he tells her that he lacks the proper experience, but he does look forward to working with her again. Gojou eventually gets very tired and starts to nod off, but first he tells Marin, without fully realizing it, that he thinks that she was very beautiful in the cosplay. Then he falls asleep. He obviously didn't realize exactly what he did, as this moment is never referenced again by him, but Marin clearly did. She instantly recalls back to when he said that since he was a child and discovered hina dolls, he doesn't say the word beautiful unless he truly means it. And for the first time, Marin gets truly flustered because of Gojou. Of course, there was that moment early on when he's taking her measurements and accidentally touches her sweet spot that makes her blush, but this is definitely different. This is a much deeper, more emotionally profound blush. This is the turning point in the series, the moment that Marin finally starts to develop feelings for Gojou, and it feels so earned. I mean, think about it. We've spent 5 episodes learning about these two as people first, and building up their friendship. And now, moving into episode 6, we can finally kickstart the romance part of this rom-com. To me, this feels more earned than the romantic interest in the vast majority of rom-com anime and manga. The majority of episode 6, the halfway point of the series, focuses on Marin being completely off-put by her newly emerging feelings for Gojou. Something she's openly trying to deny at first, mainly because of how sudden they are, and how much she never expected to like him as much any more than a friend. It's not that she was just using him to create cosplays for her. She genuinely considered him to be a friend, but it never crossed her mind that he might become something more in her heart. Until now. It's absolutely adorable, and wholesome, and amazing, seeing Marin get genuinely flustered over him. He obviously doesn't notice a thing, but she is going absolutely nuts over this revelation, although it's not entirely negative. It's not like she's opposed to the idea, she just didn't see it coming. I love it when manga authors switch things up like this, where the author is now, to a certain extent, putting Marin in his shoes. She's making her react similarly to how Gojou has always reacted to her. There's not much for me to say here other than describing each individual moment that she loses her shit over him, which I won't do, but let me just say that episode 6 is the most enjoyable, wholesome, funny, and just all-around amazing episode that I've seen in a romantic comedy anime in a long, long time. In fact, I can't think of any specifically at the moment that overtakes it, even in others of my favorites like Kobe Can't Communicate, Toradora, or Lovely Complex. But I'm not done just yet. We do get to learn more about Gojou and Marin, which is always a plus in my book. Gojou is apparently a really good cook, a skill he had to learn because his parents passed away when he was very young. Marin comments that it's very similar with her. Her mother died when she was young, and sometime later her father got a transfer from work and thus is away from home a lot, so it's just her most of the time. While she can cook, and does so on occasion, it's mostly convenience store food for her. And even when she does cook, it doesn't look too good in terms of health or taste. The look on Gojou's and his grandfather's face at both of these facts is priceless. The funniest part is when Gojou has a flashback from a few episodes prior when Marin told him that he can cook, that she can cook and do housework and stuff, and he's likely very thankful that he never had her cook for him. She also said that she eats yogurt and drinks milk every day. Horrified by this new information, Gojou's grandfather actually asks her if she wants to come over and eat with them from now on, a prospect that both her and Gojou are immediately on board with. So, the humor, like always, is on point, all the while sprinkling further characterization for them in there. But the best part is that Marin has become a bit more awkward around Gojou, as episode 6 expertly highlights. A great example is after Gojou walks Marin to the station. In past episodes, she would have excitedly said goodbye to him, and maybe even gave him a hug without thinking. But this time around, she gets very quiet and shy, a stark contrast to how she usually carries herself around him. But a change that makes perfect sense given the recent events. When she's riding home on the train, even though he's not around her anymore, she still feels very reserved and awkward. She remembers earlier when Gojou says that they didn't do anything inappropriate, and Marin asks herself if it would have been bad if they did, and contemplates what would have happened if she actually said that out loud. This is also the introduction of Juju, another female character who becomes a side character that sort of comes and goes on occasion. I'll be honest, when she was first introduced, I was very worried. While there are exceptions to this, I generally hate love triangles, and I was extremely fearful that this series was going to go in that direction with her introduction. But thankfully, at least so far, that doesn't seem to be the case. Juju doesn't even seem to be interested in Gojou romantically in any way. That's a plus, although I still can't say that I like her character very much yet. She comes off to me as this generic tsundere. I can handle tsundere in modern anime so long as something unique is done with her, and at this point, that is non-existent. When she's first introduced, she comes to Gojou's house in the rain, no coat or anything, and is soaking wet. Gojou's grandfather lets her in to use their shower, and Gojou comes home shortly afterwards. He walks in on her. There's the incredibly cliche misunderstanding. I guess it's a tiny bit unique because she trips instead of him, rather than falling on him, she falls on her back. Also, he gets a nice shot of her completely exposed vag, which I don't think I've ever seen before. But all of that comes nowhere close to saving this trite scene. Like the standard tsundere, she acts like a complete bitch and even threatens to call the cops on him for sexual harassment, or some shit. Okay, I'll admit that he should have knocked before entering the bathroom, but this is still going way overboard, and it does nothing to endear me to her upon her introduction. It turns out that she hunted him down, and by that I mean stalked him the previous day, because she knew that he was the one who created Marin's cosplay. She's a huge fan, and she wants him to create one for her. It also happens that Marin is a huge fan of her as well. In fact, she's the famous online cosplayer that Marin mentioned earlier on in the series. So they were fans of each other without even realizing it, which is pretty funny. And despite my immediate gag reflex for her character at first, once Marin gets there, she instantly lightens the mood as she gushes over finally being able to meet Juju in person. It's absolutely amazing. The character she wants to cosplay is called Black Lily from a fictional magical girl show, and Marin is excited to be able to work with her. While I have yet to truly warm up to Juju by this point, there is a nice scene with her when she realizes that her preconceptions about Marin being a stuck-up bitch that doesn't know what cosplay is wrong, and instead she's the exact kind of cosplayer that she loves. She apologizes in tears, which is really funny and even a tad emotional, although it's not enough for me just yet. I also loved when Juju asked point blank if Marin and Gojou were dating. Both of their reactions were different, Gojou getting extremely embarrassed and almost having a complete meltdown, and Marin adorably teasing him for a bit for not having a girlfriend, but they both obviously have the same reason. They were embarrassed by the question, they just had different ways of handling it. And that does it for me. And I just spent a while analyzing the first 6 episodes of My Dress Up Darling. I started writing the script a while ago. While I wanted to get this video out before the anime was completed, that obviously didn't happen. I plan on doing a video on the second half of the series, and possibly one on the rest of the manga that has yet to be adapted into anime as well. This series is truly amazing, and I'm excited to talk about it more. If you haven't seen them, I did reaction videos of every single episode in the series, so you can check them out on my channel. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please give it a like, subscribe to my channel for content in the future, hit the notification bell if you want to whenever I upload a new video, because I release new videos all the time. Share around other places on the internet if you think it deserves it, such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Try to help get it and my channel more attention. And like always, comment on the video down below because that'll help my channel out. Let me know your thoughts on the series and on this video and on my analysis. Do you agree or disagree with any of my opinions, and are there opinions on the series you have, positive or negative, that I didn't mention in this video? I'll remind you one last time, please share this video around if you liked it. While I'll keep doing reaction videos, I also want to do more scripted anime analysis videos on this channel as well. I decided to start with this one because it was so good that it gave me a lot of inspiration. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.